Learning is the key to successful investing, and who doesn't want to invest in some way?
Here at L.E.A.R.N Grow Invest, we focus on financial education, all with the aim of sharing our knowledge on personal finance, investing, and building wealth. We do this on the foundation of our faith in God.
If a more holistic approach is what you need, check out our Grow Faith-based financial coaching program.
Find out more about us at learngrowinvestclub.com
and follow us on all social media platforms at Learn, Grow, Invest.
Welcome to another episode in our CEO series here on Learn, Grow, Invest. This series is where we try to speak with CEOs of companies, not just those that are listed. I know some of you are used to that, but we're actually trying to expand the range of this series to speak to CEOs of companies that we think are interesting, who have maybe an interesting, company, whether it be, a startup who is, trying to bring something new to the market. It could be a company who is, making waves in a particular way, or just anything or any company rather that we think would be interesting for our community members to learn about as we are investors. And so any company touching the space that we're operating in, I think would make an interesting interview. So I know that was a long-winded response, but our CEO series is pretty much us speaking with CEOs of companies that we think are interesting. We try to learn a bit about them, a bit about the company, and see if we can just, add to our knowledge of, companies doing great work out there. So today I have the pleasure of speaking with Matalan from Corpcare. And, Ali and I have spoken a couple of times, and so we agreed to this interview. I think it'll be an interesting one. If you've never heard about Corpcare, their information is in the description. And of course, you'll learn more about them as we go through this episode. So thank you in advance for watching, and be sure to let us know if you have any questions in the comments below. So let's get started. Ali, how are you?
Hi, Jermaine. I'm great. How are you?
I am good. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for agreeing to, joining us for this episode.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. All right. So let's just start with a little bit about who you are. Tell us who is Ali. Let us know a bit about your history.
Sure. These are always the hardest interview questions, right? Whether it be for a job or for a interview like this one.
You don't know where to start.
And as you said, my name is Ali. I'm the founder and CEO of Corpcare, which is why I've been invited to be a part of this interview. We actually went back and forth a lot about what my title would be, whether it would be CEO or Chief Impact Officer, or have it be something a little bit more fun, especially because we're in the startup space. We have the flexibility to do that.
But it actually says, I think, Chief Impact Officer on your website.
It does. We're updating it to be CEO because we ultimately want to have a Chief Sustainability Officer on board, which is a more easily identifiable role for other organizations working with us to understand that person is really in charge of the metric side of our business and ensuring that we are adherent with the criteria of environmental, social, and governance, which we preach to our clients. So we landed on CEO, a little less fun than I would have liked, but I'm happy to have the honor of that title and to have the honor of working with the team that I work with. But my journey to starting Corpcare and to being in this position to have the conversation that we're having today, I think it's very similar to a lot of different founders. I think, most of us who start a business see a gap in the market. And one of the things that I've always been focused on throughout my life is that wherever I can create positive social impact, those are the spaces that I would like to occupy. That's what's most important to me. And specifically impact on people, right? So wherever I can do that in a meaningful way, I'm drawn to those spaces. And Corpcare was really born out of a number of different volunteer experiences that I had, where I was interacting with businesses who were reaching out about kind of how to direct their corporate philanthropy efforts. And I felt there really should be some more meaningful strategy behind that work. And across the Caribbean and in Jamaica, especially across the private sector, we have so much corporate philanthropy that it's really important that we strategically direct that philanthropy so that we make the most amount of impact possible per dollar, right? And I know that we'll get into a little bit more about Corpcare itself and what we do.
Yes, we will. Yeah.
But really, that was kind of a huge part of my journey to getting here. My background, I went to high school in Jamaica until I was 18. I moved to the US at that age to study at Northeastern University. I tried a few different degrees. I landed on business and political science as a combined degree, which is a very odd combination. But it was a fantastic learning experience for me. I'm super intrigued by policy. I'm super invested in it, and actually that's what I went on to do my master's in. But I graduated from Northeastern's Damore McKim School of Business in 2016, and then I went and actually worked with the UN for about a year in New York. I worked on the secretariat side, which is the UN side of a high-level panel on women's economic empowerment, and specifically I was working as an advocacy support specialist. The acronym for my title is ASS, so this is my plug to all young people who are watching this to really meaningfully negotiate for your titles if you're not in a place where you can negotiate for your salary. So I would have loved to have a different acronym as my title, but it was a fantastic working experience for me. It was a huge stroke of luck to even get that job in the first place. I tell people that so much of the experiences that I've had, the work that I've been able to do is born strictly out of luck and privilege. And that's a huge part of the work that I do, is trying to ensure that we broaden the base of opportunities that people have access to, so that the luck of your birth or the luck of your location or your proximity to somebody else should not determine your life outcomes. But I was extremely lucky to be connected to someone who was connected to the UN, and I was able to get an interview and get this job. As I said, it was absolutely incredible. It really furthered or deepened my interest in the policy space, and specifically work around women's economic empowerment and development in general. So after I left the UN, I applied for my master's at Columbia University, and I attended their School of International and Public Affairs for 2 years before moving home. I graduated with a Master's of Public Administration, which is a little bit like an MBA, but it's an MPA. We do a lot of economics foundational work, similar to an MBA if you go down the finance track. But we do it a little bit more focused on budgeting for developmental work, budgeting for governments, how we allocate resources. And my specialization was in urban and social policy. I did a number of different classes in different areas, but that was kind of the subject area that we landed on for me, and I specialized in Caribbean and Latin American studies. Moved home in 2019, kind of perfect timing before COVID. New York City was experienced a ton of challenge at the beginning of the COVID crisis, the pandemic, and was volunteering with a number of organizations through 876 Volunteer. As I said, that's kind of where Corpcare's journey began, but it was not without several hiccups that we arrived at this place. In March of 2020, when we had finally tested our product on a couple different organizations, we felt we were ready for launch to take on some large-scale clients. The pandemic hit Jamaica. It came to our shores, and I was approached by L.E.A.R.N and Yakini Wallen Bryan to support them in founding Citizens Response JA. Many of you may know of Yakini and L.E.A.R.N through the entrepreneurship space in Jamaica. They're both incredible entrepreneurs. But together we founded Citizens Response JA, which was a multi-million-dollar public-private sector partnership to deploy PPE, testing booths, testing swabs, and a number of different materials to hospitals across Jamaica through the Ministry of Health. And that's what I did full-time for about 6 to 9 months at the beginning of the pandemic. It really was a labor of love for all of us. We had quite a large administrative team. I roped in my dad. L.E.A.R.N and Yakini roped in a number of their friends. Yakini was really responsible for a lot of the engineering behind it. L.E.A.R.N hosted all of us at the Blue Dot offices. I was headquartered at my parents' house. It was really my first voyage into aggressive entrepreneurial life. We were working 12, 14-hour days. Raising capital was quite an experience, and it just introduced me to a number of different players in the space in Jamaica, and hopefully, ultimately we feel it created a lot of positive impact for us in terms of doing what we felt was our responsibility to play a part in addressing the COVID crisis locally. So that following that period, there were a few different steps, and in early 2022, we relaunched Corpcare with an eye towards being an ESG consulting firm as opposed to a CSR strategy and execution firm. And I'm sure you and I will talk a little bit more about that, but I hope that gives some good context into, my qualifications to be in this position and my experience in the entrepreneurship world. I've probably spoken for too long. Us as women tend to over-validate our place in the world, and so I will stop now.
And background is good, context is good. It helps us to understand a little bit about who you are, right? So there's no, it's something that's usually meant to be open-ended, because as much as you're willing to share is as much as we're willing to learn about you. So it's completely fine. It sounds very interesting. That educational journey, journey into entrepreneurship, and I mean it's the way that it works, right? You'll tend to see such glaring gaps. You're like, I mean, at least for us, we were like surprised that nobody was filling the gaps that we saw. And I mean, even something as simple as this series, we saw where there wasn't really prominence or feature of CEOs who are doing great work in our country. So it felt like such an obvious thing to do, the CEO series, because it's to me, it's like something that, 5 years from now, when Corpcare is at, I'm sure, much higher levels, somebody can look back at this interview and say, well, yeah, exactly. So that's the idea, to get to speak to as many successful CEOs as we can, to learn from them, to get like the blueprint or the history, the genesis of how things started, and then we can, see how far they've come. So, thank you for that background. I'll ask you a few questions though, based on that sort of overview. Sure. You mentioned the phrase, working with companies to achieve positive social impact. What does that mean for you exactly?
Well, I think that it's my personal belief that social responsibility is every business's responsibility, right? So you interact in a marketplace of consumers who are impacted by the products or services that you provide. I think that every company should be working towards positively impacting that set of people, that group of people, that society that they operate in, whether it be environmentally, socially, or from a governance perspective. But really, I think it's an investment for the business, not just one that they should make because it's their responsibility, but one that is actually financially viable for them to make, one that has a ton of return on investment. The more that they invest in the social infrastructure around them, the environmental longevity around them, the more that they enrich their client base, the more that they enrich the economy that they operate in, and the more that they build up the space for them to, essentially their business playground. And we see from the research that businesses that do this really effectively, they keep conscious consumers. I mean, about 76% of consumers will discontinue relationships with companies that treat employees, communities, or the environment poorly. About 83% of consumers think that companies should be actively engaged in ESG best practices. We see this on an employee level. It significantly reduces employee turnover. It increases the average transaction size. You can, lower investment risk for investors and attract capital. I mean, really from an ROI perspective, the list goes on. But from a belief system perspective, I think that companies all who are profiting from the societies that they operate in have a responsibility to meaningfully and positively contribute back to those societies.
Okay. And do you find that it's hard for companies to buy into that? Is it? I mean, what's the response like? And we're gonna get into what Corpcare does, but I mean,
Sure.
we're already kind of talking about it, right? So,
I think I think at
what has the
base
response
level,
been?
yeah, for sure. I think at base level, everyone buys into this idea, right? It sounds nice, it feels good, and it's easy to buy into. I think where what really moves the needle is companies that are looking for private or public investment. They see where investors are demanding this type of disclosure.
Ah,
And that really helps to make the case for us to say that this is not just something that's nice to have, but this is something that you need to have.
yeah,
There are a number of players in the space who I think are leading the charge on this, particularly in the Caribbean. I think Grace Kennedy is a great example of a company that's really
yeah,
leading the charge on that. They've had a robust corporate social responsibility strategy and a We Care ethos from time, and they're moving now into the ESG disclosure space. We see with a lot of the financial institutions, VMBS, NTB, they're starting to make noise about this or in and around this area. So I think that all of those players and investors combine to really make the case for us.
yeah,
The challenge with our business model is that what we're actually not challenging competitors in this space. Yes, there are a ton of consultants who do this work, you know, like a PwC, a KPMG, a Deloitte, a Bain. They are all consultants who have the capacity and the expertise to do ESG consulting work. But, you know, they're not exclusively consultants who work in the ESG space. But what we feel that we are really competing against in the Caribbean is the status quo, which is
Yeah.
that ESG disclosures have not been regulatory requirements to date. And that is changing dramatically internationally, and we certainly want to make the case to these companies that we don't want to be left behind in that. We are a region that is at risk of being left behind in that. And, you know, let's not get caught on our back foot. Let's do this preemptively, proactively, and
Yeah.
make some meaningful changes that bolsters your business, that bolsters our communities. I mean, our region is on the front lines of the environmental crisis. We are experiencing, I mean, right now outside is extremely hot. You can attest to this, Jermaine. We are experiencing global warming.
Yeah.
But that still isn't as pressing as the conversation around investment, right? So businesses on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question. It's, you know,
It
there's
does.
a lot
It
of
does.
different
It
moving
does.
parts.
Yeah. Yeah. So and I definitely have some more questions, but what I'll do is I'll, you know, have everybody understand who Corpcare is. Let's cover that part before we get into any more
Sure.
questions. So, who is Corpcare? Who are you serving, and why do you exist?
Okay. So first off, I want to acknowledge the Corpcare team, which is an incredibly dynamic, innovative, and professional group of young people predominantly. We're diverse, we're woman-led, and they're just incredible people to work with. And I think any business who interacts with our team can feel assured that they hold the combined expertise and level of experience to meaningfully guide their business through their ESG journey or whatever journey they choose to go on with the Corpcare team. They're all certified ESG consultants or practitioners. We actually have an affiliation now with the Center for Sustainability and Excellence, who certified us as practitioners that will allow us to certify other ESG practitioners, which is super exciting. We have that exclusive license for Jamaica. We're also able to do referral work with them. So any job that we feel could benefit from international expertise, we have the opportunity to work with them, and they have the opportunity to work with us. So that's super exciting. So from a who we are perspective, I just absolutely love our team, and I'm super excited about them as individuals and as a collective. And so I wanted to first share that. Our founding team is still involved today and is an absolutely incredible group of people. We can learn lots more about them on our website, on our Instagram, our social media, and I could talk about them.
Well, I mean,
for
feel free to
days.
name them if you wish.
But in terms of kind of what we do and how that ties into who we are, I think what we do is very much a reflection of who we all are as a team. But we have three primary pillars associated with the work that we do. And our website is currently undergoing some updates, so you'll start to see this more and more come through our communications as well as our monthly newsletter. But the first pillar is education and awareness. As I said to you before, we're competing against a status quo, so we need to really educate and make organizations aware that we exist in this space. And also kind of around demystifying what ESG is, right? So within that pillar of our work, we'll be launching the Impact Circle powered by Corpcare later this month, where we invite client organizations as well as a number of different stakeholders who are ESG experts or who are executives within organizations who are looking to undergo an ESG journey to join our free membership community to have a monthly demystifying ESG seminar, a quarterly roundtable with an ESG expert, to receive a curated newsletter, to take surveys and receive reporting on data about ESG in the region. Right now data is a huge issue for ESG in the region. There's a lot of international data available, but we really want to bolster that and make sure that our data is reflective of actually what's happening to our organizations and is culturally competent data, which we think is super important. So that's the first pillar. We'll also be offering those ESG practitioner courses I mentioned starting in September, which is super exciting. So anyone who's looking to get into this space, looking to work as an ESG consultant, looking to be what we call an ESG evangelist within your organization, this is a great course for you. We think that boards are really going to be undergoing these courses as well, a lot more in the future, especially as they have to manage compliance with ESG criteria as we move forward in this space. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is kind of our bread and butter ESG consulting work, which ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And really what it is a set of criteria that allows consumers and investors to assess where your company is in terms of its social responsibility and its environmental impact, right? So there's a ton of different frameworks and rating agencies globally. Some people will look to the S&P index. Some people will look to accountability, Sustainalytics, SASB, ISSB, the list goes on, right? And we can work with you on identifying which are the best ratings agencies to work with, which are the best frameworks to adhere to for your organization, dependent on your industry. But this really looks like anything from an ESG materiality assessment, really understanding and identifying the material risks and opportunities for your business when it comes to ESG, right through to integrating an ESG strategy or policy in your business, looking at what kind of software is the best for you to use to record metrics or data related to those metrics, produce ESG reports on an annual basis, integrate those into your annual reporting processes, and so on. And then our third pillar is really what I like to call our catch-all pillar for social impact. We do project management services. So this could look like retainer services for businesses. This could look like asking Corpcare to manage a social impact project for your business or foundation, whether it be a one-off or on an ongoing basis. That pillar really excites me because I love projects. I love working on different new dynamic issues, problems to solve. So I find that super exciting. But those are our three primary pillars of work. Does that make sense?
It does. But what I will ask you to do though is to maybe in one sentence tell us who Corpcare is for the person who may not have been able
for our elevator pitch.
Yes, there you go.
So
because it may just have, what I don't want is persons to maybe miss what
for sure,
you do.
the core of what we do.
Yes.
For sure. Think that the core of what we do is that Corpcare is a woman-led social impact consultancy, right? So we look at social impact consulting across the board. That's just at the baseline. What we believe is that businesses that do good do better. And we envision a world in which every business is a strong and positive corporate citizen.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so
Still
so that
not
speaks
the full
to the end
elevator
goal.
pitch maybe that you're looking for, but
No.
maybe to
So
our beliefs and to our end goal.
No, man, it's clear. It's clear because it means then that, the services may change, right?
Right. But our core belief remains the same.
Exactly, right? The core focus is social impact. So regardless of what that may look like in terms of the services, the team, etc., you're
Right.
still going to be headed towards that goal.
Exactly. And that's super
So,
important to us, that continuity,
yeah,
that longevity.
exactly.
I should not have
So
to
then,
be the CEO for Corpcare to operate the way that it operates.
yeah. So help me to understand now who do you serve, right? Talk to us about some of the companies that you work with. Is it only listed companies? Is it a certain size company? Is it, for startups? Like, explain the target client or some of the characteristics of their company.
Of our current clients. Sure. I love this question because it's very rare that I get to answer this question in a medium like this one. So often people are like, which industry do you serve? How big does the company need to be? Is it publicly listed or not? And the truth is that I think publicly listed companies are the... Can you hear me, Jermaine?
Yeah, man, I'm hearing you.
Okay, great. Sorry. I think publicly listed companies are obviously, first in line to be interested in these types of services. And I think obviously larger size companies are first in line to be interested in these services. And then I think third and finally, financial services businesses are first in line to be interested in these services. I think financial services organizations are really interesting because they face the most trickle-down regulation from US, Canadian, UK markets. And those are the markets that are looking at regulating ESG very heavily, right?
But does that mean that's only those three markets?
No, right. So this is what So that's what I'll clarify. So I think those businesses absolutely should be looking at their ESG journey. They should absolutely be looking towards publishing an ESG report. They should absolutely be looking at integrating ESG into their business operations and functions, whether just from an investor relations perspective or from a regulatory compliance perspective. We believe that they really should be thinking about this, right? So that's quite a big pool of businesses, especially regionally. But we want to work with purpose-driven organizations of any size, industry, or type who want to meaningfully invest in this work, understanding that there will be a significant return on investment long-term for them. It's just that some businesses, especially, for example, micro or small enterprises, may not be in a position where they're ready to invest in ESG consulting services, for example. So maybe we'll bring them into our umbrella under our education and awareness programming, where we will be able to provide them templates or blueprints for integrating ESG from the beginning into their service offering or product offering, right? And just their business operations generally.
So let me ask a question like this. So L.E.A.R.N Grow Invest is a limited liability company.
Case study.
Yeah. So we're 1 year old as a registered company. We have 2 employees.
Okay.
We serve, we served. I don't want to say the number of companies we've served, but we're a small company, community of a few thousand persons. Would ESG be something that we should consider, or because you mentioned having it a part of the makeup of the company for them to kind of build on. What would that look like for L.E.A.R.N Grow Invest as an example?
For sure. So I think one of the things to think about, like, for example, when you're putting together the policies for L.E.A.R.N Grow Invest, is do you have a sustainability, an impact, or an ESG policy? People use those words pretty interchangeably. Sustainability, I think, is going to be the language of the future, no pun intended, because sustainability should last to the future. But I think you should definitely be thinking about that, how you integrate ESG criteria or particular metrics that fit your business, because you are an online business, as far as I know, right?
Yeah, man. We try to do as many things virtual or online.
Virtual or remote online. So, I think policy or strategy would be the first thing that I would really think about. I would also think about it in terms of onboarding employees. So if you truly believe in for example, maybe long-term L.E.A.R.N, Grow, Invest wants to have a foundation, or L.E.A.R.N, Grow, Invest wants to actually invest some of its profit margin into social responsibility initiatives, into its environmental stewardship, into the community that it works with. If you want to reinvest those profits into your business even, what is the criteria by which you go about doing that is something to really meaningfully think about. And I think that whether it be ESG or it be, you know, the framework that we think about at Corpcare from a social impact perspective, that's something that's super meaningful to think about early on. Some really awesome businesses that come to mind when I think about businesses that started as small businesses that have grown exponentially, that have social responsibility embedded into their culture, is Def Can Coffee, which is a local example. They really honestly function like a social business or a social enterprise, and they're extremely successful at what they do. But they have integrated impact into their core part of the way that they operate as a business. And I think that has provided them with significant returns, not just emotionally, but financially. I think Warby Parker, the glasses company internationally, is also a great example. They've now gone public, and they've been a social business from their core, which is a really interesting transition to see. Sorry, you were going to ask me a question.
No, I was just going to say, for us, we started this company as a, you know, that kind of filling the gaps that we saw when we ran or managed or operated largely as a community. So we've been in existence for 5 years, and 4 years out of that 5, we were just doing free content, doing free classes, doing outreach each month, you know, going into schools, teaching persons how to manage their money, going into churches, etc. So we do have a very high sense of purpose as it relates to giving back, you know, laying the foundation for the next generation, ensuring that everybody, you know, regardless of background, has the basics in terms of financial education and literacy, right? So it's a big part of what we do. And a part of the reason why we started a company is that we needed to raise funds to continue to do our outreach, right? Because we saw that it was challenging to get the funding that we needed to consistently give back. So it is something that we see as very important.
Yeah, and I love that model that you have.
Yeah. I mean, it's worked for us so far. I think the part for us that maybe we need to talk to you about is, I guess, maybe doing it from a holistic perspective, maybe including, you know, having something that employees can look at if they start to work with us, because we are looking at that right now.
For sure. Because you want to make sure that any employees that you bring on are ones that are attracted to your business, not just because of the work that you do, but the impact that you have. And I think for a company like L.E.A.R.N, Grow, Invest, I would, you know, off the bat invite L.E.A.R.N, Grow, Invest to join our impact circle, which, as I said before, is a completely free membership community, and start to see where there might be alignment for you from a strategy perspective. I'm a big believer in not recommending, you know, investment in packages, for example, with a consulting company like Corpcare, unless a business needs it and is ready for it. So, you know, off the bat, I would direct you to the free resources that we have available. And we go from there. You know, relationship building with companies is a huge part of what we do too.
Yeah, we're definitely interested in understanding and seeing, you know, how best we can, you know, partner with you to just, you know, make what we do as a company even better, because we do work with companies in terms of investor relations, you know, supporting them through services like our earnings calls, etc. And it is something that what we're trying to do is build a partnership with those companies. So it makes sense that we would, you know, understand the impact of you know, if they should ask us questions about it, of course, we'd, you know, refer them to Corpcare, because we're definitely not experts in that area, but just at least to understand it and its impact. So if we should ever be in a position where we need to either describe our position or explain our position, we can do so in a meaningful way. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
And I
we'll
mean,
definitely talk about that.
for sure. And I think also, I've totally lost my train of thought around this, but I think there is an opportunity also for you to disclose on the work that you do from a social impact perspective by conducting surveys, for example, like when you interview me, sending a survey, understanding how I learned about Learn, Grow, Invest, the impact that it had on me, the people that I know who engage with Learn, Grow, Invest, surveying your followers, your audience, which I'm sure you guys are doing already, but maybe asking some more questions around impact. And how you've really influenced people, and being able to report on that even from like a fundraising or an investment perspective is fantastic, and not to mention being able to report on it from an onboarding perspective as well for employees.
Yeah. Okay, so
everyone, that
we'll
was my
definitely
pitch.
have a conversation. Yes, we'll definitely have a conversation around it. So further to you explaining what the company does, who you're serving, you mentioned you wanted to just highlight your team and the work that they're doing. Is there any specific role or team member that you want to speak further about? Kind of explain that, I guess, the makeup of the team, who yeah.
Sure. So I won't accidentally play favorites by talking about any one team member, but it's about 5 of us who are on the team.
Okay.
And everyone has a unique skill set, but everyone has a background in sustainability and social impact, which is a requirement for us. And then what we do is, if we work with like a particularly large firm, for example, we either look to CSE to support us on that, or we bring on additional ESG consultants who are within our network. But I think our team is just really, really dynamic, really fun to work with, and incredibly smart. We talk all the time about how we enable tech into our day-to-day operations, how we can leverage the use of AI now to create models that better assist organizations move through their ESG journey and their processes. So I just feel really excited and positive about our team, and I think that as a founder in particular, that has given me so much confidence to go out in the world and pitch our company for services for clients, and really have the trust to say we can do this for you, knowing that I have the kind of team that will be able to execute on that.
Okay. And you said that the information about your team is on your website. I did see it there. So
yes.
All right, cool.
And we're actually building out a section where we're able to actually bring out more about each team member. So right now it's their names and their roles and all of that, but we're adding even more information so people can request to work with certain team members or liaise directly with any of us.
Well, the first thing I always do when I see a company and their team, I'm going on LinkedIn and I'm checking, the
so
history
we'll have
of
it
the
all
company.
in there.
Yeah, exactly.
We're doing it for you.
So you mentioned the impact circle. Can you speak a little bit about that? Have us, understand what that is?
Sure. I'm actually going to bring up the document so that I make sure I don't miss anything while we're talking about it. But the impact circle really was born out of conversations like this one, where a lot of people are interested in ESG. ESG is being spoken about a lot, but no one really knows how best to interact with it. And we wanted to create a space where we can learn about what companies in our region, in Jamaica, are doing, all kind of, rooted in that belief that businesses that do good do better, right? So I can share with you some of the member benefits that we have as a part of the Impact Circle. As I said, and I'm going to keep plugging this, it's a completely free membership community. We typically invite 1 to 2 members of each organization that joins to sit within the Impact Circle, so that they get the most value, and so that other individuals within the Impact Circle can learn from each other, and we can problem solve together. But the first benefit is our Demystifying ESG series, which is a 30-minute, I think about it like how you think about earnings calls. A 30-minute breakdown of what's happening in the space, what the E means, what the S means, what the G means, which are the new ratings agencies in the network, what are the new players in terms of frameworks, what are the new players in terms of software. Really, what is ESG and what does it mean to your business? So that's the first thing. Second thing is that is those quarterly roundtables that I mentioned before, where we're going to really bring in qualified practitioners, and members will have the opportunity to learn and connect, learn from and connect with them. Then we're going to provide that curated monthly newsletter. We already have a monthly newsletter that goes out to our entire community, our audience. We'll provide a more tailored version of that newsletter to our impact circle, which focuses specifically on topics that are relevant to the circle based on conversations that we've been having. We'll also conduct surveying within the impact circle. We can support organizations within the impact circle to survey their own teams, but we also want to survey the members of the impact circle to really understand what they're getting out of this, what we can do better to give them more value, and report on that on a quarterly and annual basis, right? So that they really have a transparent view of what it is that we're doing. And then finally, we'll offer priority access to our practitioner program for individuals who aspire to be ESG consultants or ESG practitioners.
Okay.
I think this is a really low-cost solution for businesses who don't want to bring on consultants from Corpcare or another consulting firm, but they want to have some in-house expertise and make sure they're compliant, especially from a regulatory perspective, and have someone who's kind of an in-house expert. It's a really low barrier to entry from a cost perspective. It's a one-time investment in an ESG practitioner course, and we'll offer a discount and promotional code for that for Impact Circle members. So those are really the headline benefits. We want to do a number of in-person meetups. We want conferences to come out of this. We've been conducting a few different seminars and training sessions for businesses within the private sector of Jamaica, specifically already. So being able to bring that to a wider audience.
I think I saw that. I missed that one.
Which one?
I think I saw something relating to. I think you did a post about a session you did with the PSOJ or something like that. Is that what you're referring?
Maybe it may have been a different online session, but we're looking to do on the PSOJ coming up this quarter.
Oh, okay. I thought I missed it.
No, you're good. We've done a few in the past, but we're really ramping that side of the business up. And honestly, that's just been from organic interest in really learning about the space. We do those for businesses for the most part at little to no cost, just because we feel it's so important to really get into the space and understand what's going on. For our organizations that we're partnered with, obviously that's something that we jump to do. We're a part of the Caribbean Corporate Governance Network, the PSOJ, CSC, as I mentioned before. So that's really a priority for us. But yeah, so we're looking to do just more and more of those and really have FaceTime with people and understand what they're dealing with. Research is such a big part of what we have to do as a relatively new business and a business that's looking for a broader clientele base.
So how do person sign up for the Impact Circle?
Sure. So right now, especially as we go through this kind of first run, we've designed this as an exclusive membership community. So what we're asking persons to do is either if you're a client of Corpcare, obviously 2 members of your organization will automatically be invited. We're also inviting any member of the private sector organization of Jamaica, which is over 400 member organizations, to have a place in the Impact Circle. And then we just ask businesses to reach out to us directly. If they express interest, we'd be happy to have them. We just want to make sure that people who are interested in this work are in here, and that we keep the topic focused on social impact and ESG. So you can visit our website, www.corpcareja.com. It's also in my name, and sign up that way. You can also book a consultation with us through our website and sign up that way as well. Consultations are also completely free. And you can sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date, also through our website on what's happening with the Impact Circle.
Okay, sounds good. So we will be sure to link that in the description as well,
That
so
would be
you can
great.
just go
Thank you.
straight to that. All right, cool. So
Yes.
just a couple more questions here. In terms of your vision for the work you're doing now, the space you're in, what does, maybe the next 5 years look for? What does the next 5 years, what do the next 5 years look like for you as a company?
I think overwhelmingly, the way that we would like to position ourselves over the next 5 years is really as thought leaders in the space, particularly in the Caribbean region. I think one of the biggest challenges working with external consultants in particular, especially those who are not based regionally, is that there is a cultural barrier and a lack of cultural fluency or competency that hinders the true understanding of the organization's kind of big picture. And I think we want to really, as Corpcare, establish ourselves as the thought leaders in the region, as also as the go-to organization to work on, ESG consulting, ESG reporting, social impact projects, monitoring and evaluation, data analytics is a critical part of that process. So we, 5 years from now, if we had this conversation again, my hope is that we would have established ourselves that way.
Okay. Well, who knows? I may just send you a calendar invite for 5 years from now.
5 years from now, I would love that. Let's, we write it down and we set that goal and we manifest it. So
Yeah.
I'm all for the calendar invite for 2028.
Yeah, let's bring it to maybe a little bit, the shorter term or short to medium term. What are you hoping to accomplish as a company, let's say in the next 12 months? Who are you? Maybe what are some of the milestones that you're hoping to be able to accomplish during that time?
Sure. Well, I mean, from a financial perspective, we're looking to 2x our revenue in the next 12 months. So that's obviously a big goal on our mind. I think in the short term as well, we're also, really keen on establishing our own impact fund, investing 3% of our own profits into meaningfully investing in social projects. Obviously, we live and breathe ESG, so from a policy and strategy perspective, that's baked in, but we really want to put our money where our mouth is and invest in really high potential organizations in the region who are doing incredible work. We also feel as a small business that we can more meaningfully invest in other foundations or nonprofit organizations who do this work already exceptionally well. And increase their impact rather than doing work strictly in-house. And that's something that we recommend to smaller to medium-sized enterprises generally. So in the short term, revenue is obviously a huge goal. Being able to invest our profits impactfully, meaningfully, socially is a huge goal. Being able to have a successful completion of the first year of the impact circle is a huge goal. Onboarding a few more clients is a huge goal. And really getting the Jamaican private sector in particular talking about this work is a huge goal.
Yeah.
And we are out there beating the pavement talking about it. So we really hope that it catches on. And we hope people get as excited about it as we are. I think ESG feels super overwhelming to people right now. The regulatory landscape is super complex. It's very confusing, especially across industry. And we want to cut through that noise for your business and ensure that you feel as though you can trust our business to take care of yours. And so short term, that's always front of mind for us.
Okay, cool. So when you work with companies, is it on an ongoing basis? Is it like a project, or what type of engagements do you normally have with clients?
Sure. So it really varies dependent on the client needs, obviously. The first thing that we're always going to do is have a free consultation with our prospective clients. We say that free consultation is 30 minutes, but the truth is that those consultations last as long as they need to last, because we really want to get a holistic picture of what you're dealing with within your business. Immediately after that, we're going to send you a proposal outlining what we talked about, what we heard, and what we think would be useful services or products for your organization. From that, you can kind of choose a la carte what you like, or you can take on the whole package that we're recommending. So sometimes that will look like a short-term engagement up front. Sometimes that will look like a long-term engagement. Sometimes for bigger clients, that will look like a retainer agreement for like a 2 to 3 year period to conduct ESG reporting, for example. So it really depends on the client needs, but always the start of the process is robust, meaningful, introductory conversations to ensure that we really understand not just what you need from us, but what you do, what you're super passionate about, your industry. We go off and we do our own research on that, and hope that we come back to the table with a meaningful proposal that meets your needs. From there, we have a very strict set of processes in terms of how we engage with clients. We ensure that we have a resource bank available to our clients at all times where they can see all of the engagement work that we've done to date. They have access to research that we've done. They have access to external resources, standard operating procedures for the cadence of our meetings, the project management style that we use. All of that is really, really important to us, and we think lays the foundation for a successful engagement with a client.
Okay, well, it sounds comprehensive, so that's pretty cool. All right, so what I'll do, usually when we close out, we ask we kind of switch it back to a little bit more personal question, not too personal, but just kind of asking you 3 questions really. First, what are you reading now? So maybe a book or a podcast. So whether it's a book you're reading or a podcast that you're listening to now that you think would be interesting to share. So let's start there, and I'll share the other 2 questions.
So I'm pulling up my Spotify as we speak to tell you what I'm listening to from a podcast perspective. So I listen to, every morning I listen to Up First, which is usually about a 15-minute rundown of primarily US based news. And then I usually listen to the BBC's kind of 1-minute breakdown of what's happening internationally. I start my day like that every single day for as long as I can remember. It used to be, before I was really into podcasts, I used to turn on CNN for the first 15 minutes of my day, which is a lot for some people. Some people don't like to digest that much news first thing in the morning. I think that's my policy background coming in, that I do like to ingest that much news.
You want to know what's happening.
Yeah. Then I listen to the Daily Motivation podcast with Lewis Howes, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And that's usually like a 5 to 15 minute snapshot of a longer episode that he's had on his typical show. So Lewis Howes, I listen to his other shows when they air. I also love The Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett. I think that's great. And then I, teeter around a few different podcasts. I used to listen to everything Brené Brown when she had Dare to Lead and Unlocking Us. But I listen to the Policy Cast by Harvard Kennedy School. I listen to Sustainalytics podcasts, and really just make sure that I'm listening to, news about ESG, obviously, all the time. I read a ton of nonfiction. I'm also an auditory learner, so I listen to books all the time. I'm trying to think of what were anything Brené Brown would be a favorite book of mine, so I always recommend that. I'm listening to a book right now on scaling your leadership. I will send it to you, and we can link it in the description as well.
Yes, please.
And all also, obviously, doing mindless things like scrolling TikTok.
Okay.
Or listening to music.
Okay, cool. The next question is, in terms of advice that you'd give to somebody who maybe has a business idea, would like to start a company, what's maybe the most important thing you'd recommend that they pay attention to? So it's like a startup tip or an entrepreneurship tip that you'd give to somebody, whether seeking to start or who has already started, but maybe not, having a handle on things.
I think just start would be my first tip. I think dive in, do as much research you can about the gap that you're trying to fill. There's so many free resources available to us online. AI is absolutely changing the game for us in terms of producing documentation around the ideas that we have. Leverage that. Use as many free resources as possible up front. Apply for startup incubator programs like RevUp, which is an incubator program based here.
Actually, a part of RevUp right now. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, yeah. So they have two streams where they deal with startups, and then they also deal with kind of post-startup stage businesses that are trying to scale. So I always recommend people to apply for an incubator program. I think there are very few entrepreneurs who are young and ambitious who have all the resources, all the tools right out the gate to start their business. Actually, they say that the most successful entrepreneurs are those who start a little bit later in their life. Around middle age is typically when apparently you have the most success as an entrepreneur. I think Jermaine, you and
you probably have some life experience. I started my first company when I was in high school. That failed. L.E.A.R.N Invest is my second company, and it's a lot more successful at this point than my first company. Maybe because of all the things I've been through. So
right.
I can see that.
And failing fast, I think, is important too, right out the gate. Do as many things wrong early so that you don't do them wrong later. But yeah, I think very few of us have the resources, the expertise, the time to do these things as well as we would like straight out the gate. I've been really lucky and privileged that I have a lot of access to mentorship. Has been a huge thing for me. And resources, support from family and friends to do this type of work. But incubator programs, starting, researching, those are really my go-to things. Immersing yourself,
All right. And final question that I'll ask you: Are you an investor? And if yes, what are you invested in right now? You don't have to tell me any specific investments, but just your investment personality, so to speak.
Sure. So I like to be a low touch investor. I'm joking. No, but I do invest, and I specifically use a platform called L.E.A.R.N, which is a women's only investment platform. And I am specifically invested in ESG rated funds. So I strategically align my personal investments with environmental, social, and governance.
That sounds like something we're gonna have to talk about in another conversation, because I'm curious now to understand what that platform that you mentioned, how that works, what your returns have been, etc. So we're gonna take that in another conversation. But that's interesting.
For sure, and that's my primary investment platform. Obviously, I'm super interested in the local stock market. And have a few other investments kind of here and there, but L.E.A.R.N is really the place that I check up on the most, and the place that I spend the most time in thinking about investment.
Okay, cool. And finally, I'll give you an opportunity to maybe say any closing remarks, call to action. I'll actually make you full screen so that it lands well, and you can just share anything that you'd want to share to anybody who would watch, whether it be just a call to reach out to you or anything like that.
For sure.
All right. So
thank you, Jermaine.
3, 2.
Feels weird being here alone. But first, I just want to thank you so much, Jermaine, and the entire Learn, Grow, Invest team and platform for having me on today. It was honestly such a fun conversation and such an honor to be able to have this conversation with you and reach your audience. The thing that I would like anyone listening or watching to do is really to visit our website, www.corpcareja.com. Sign up for our newsletter, inquire about our impact circle, and of course, if you're so inclined, book a free 30-minute consultation with us. I'm really looking forward to meeting each and every one of you and continuing the conversation around social impact in Jamaica and across the region. You can email us directly at assist@corpcareja.com, and those emails all come to me and my team, so we will get back to you within 24 hours of emailing us. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this conversation and for having me on the Learn, Grow, Invest platform.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Ali. Great conversation.
You,
I'm
Jermaine.
I'm very interested to see how the company progresses. I look forward to meeting the team, and I'm sure
Thank
we'll
you.
have some opportunities to work together.
For sure, absolutely. Together we go much further. So thank you so
Yes,
much for having me.
you're very welcome. All right, take care.
Learning is the key to successful investing, and who doesn't want to invest in some way?
Here at L.E.A.R.N Invest, we focus on financial education, all with the aim of sharing our knowledge on personal finance, investing, and building wealth. We do this on the foundation of our faith in God.
If a more holistic approach is what you need, check out our Grow Faith-based financial coaching program.
Find out more about us at learngrowinvestclub.com
And follow us on all social media platforms at Learn, Grow, Invest.